Cha-cha on the ballroom beat. Got 2 left feet. Get on the ballroom beat. They're dancing in the street. They're on the ballroom beat. We can tango, we can swing, we can do anything. Walking through the door and waltz on the floor. You wanna feel the heat? Get on the ballroom beat. Cha-cha on the ballroom beat. Foxtrot on the ballroom beat. Salsa on the ballroom beat. Cha-cha on the ballroom beat.
Good evening and welcome to On the Ballroom Beat. I'm your host, Lania Berger, and with me tonight I have a very special guest from the Orlando Sentinel newspaper. This is their arts writer and critic, Matt Palm. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey, Lania. Thanks for having me. I'm real glad to be here.
We're so excited to have you. You are a busy guy to get a hold of, by the way, because you are constantly out and about in the town seeing all these wonderful things that are going on in the Central Florida arts community.
Well, this is very true. The trickiest part about being an arts writer is the shows you cover are all at night, but you have to be writing during the day. So you are sort of working both ends of the clock, as it were.
And can you just tell us a little bit about what your position entails?
Sure. As the arts writer for the paper, I cover the fine arts. So you won't probably find me at a Motley Crue concert or Iron Maiden or something like that. Instead, you look for me at plays, ballets, the opera, classical music, those sort of events. And it's a wide variety. I mean, I see all of that. I review those as the critic, but then I also write a lot of feature stories, interviewing the people behind the scenes, the actors on the stage, the musicians, to explain to readers, what they might be interested in, to try to help them find things to spend their free time with.
And do you have a favorite entity that you like to cover? Because I know you do visual arts, Broadway style, opera, ballet, everything.
Well, technically I don't have any favorites. But I will say my background is most strongly in theater. So the theater reviewing comes easiest to me. But because I know a lot about theater, the other genres, it's often more interesting to actually write the preview stories because I'm learning about them too. I'm learning about visual art along with my readers, which is interesting to me.
And let me ask you too, you talked a little bit about the interviews that you do. Have you had somebody stand out as just one of the most fascinating interviews you've ever done?
Most fascinating. The best interview I ever did was hands down Carol Burnett. And
I love her.
I do too now. I loved her then, but now I love her more. I don't interview a lot of celebrities. I'm very local focused, but if a celebrity is coming to Central Florida to do something, I sometimes get to interview them. And she was doing a program at the King Center over in Melbourne on the East Coast. And we set up a phone interview, and she called me on the phone, and her distinctive voice and her friendly manner, we ended up talking for almost an hour, which is very unusual for a celebrity interview. But she was just very chatty, and we hit it off, and we had a great conversation.
That's so cool. And who are some other interesting people that you've had the opportunity to interview?
Well, people your viewers would know would include Josh Groban. I spoke to very recently. He was on tour in Florida recently, so he was coming through town. And let's see, I have talked to William Shatner recently from Star Trek. Interesting guy, lots of fun, just like you'd expect from the wacky stuff he gets up to on TV. And yeah, I mean, those are the two biggest names of recent days.
Josh Groban sang on Dancing with the Stars before, although he has made it perfectly clear he's like dancing is his weakest point.
Yes.
The theater, acting, singing, fantastic, but dancing.
He and I have that in common.
Not so. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the second half of the show. Okay, but I also wanted to talk to you. Of course, now you're an arts writer and a critic, but you've been in a journalism position for many, many years. What other positions have you held with the newspaper?
Well, I know a lot about the journalism business because I've held a lot of positions. A lot of people ask me to be an arts writer if you have to have special training, if I went to college to study theater or study dance, and the answer is no. I studied journalism. And this was just a passion of mine that because as you develop expertise and you develop experience, you end up in positions like this. But by studying journalism, I was, I guess, well trained for a variety of things. And so at the Sentinel, I've done everything from design the pages, pick the pictures, to copy edit the stories and write the headlines, to be the editor who actually chooses which stories run in the different sections. You know, find the health stories for the health section, the travel stories for travel. So I've done a variety of things.
Have you ever had to shout, "Stop the presses"?
Technically, yes.
And is it, I mean, of course when we see it on TV, it's like, "Stop the presses." Does that really happen?
Very, very, very rarely. I mean, it has to be a huge, huge error. There's a big expense involved with stopping the presses, because as the presses wind down, all that paper and ink gets wasted. You know, the pages start to blur, it has to be ripped out, they've got to re-thread the press. There's sort of like threading an old film projector. It takes time, it takes money. And the only time I ever had to do it was not at the Orlando Sentinel, it was at a newspaper in New York I worked for before that. And the error that was so critical we had to stop was the wrong barcode was on the newspaper. It was a Sunday newspaper, which meant it was a much more expensive edition, and the weekday regular price barcode had somehow had gone on the computer. And we noticed it, and we had to stop to fix the pricing, because the paper would have lost hundreds and hundreds and thousands of dollars.
That's interesting. Oh my goodness.
And I did call the press.
Was it dramatic?
Like, I didn't have to run in. I mean, it's on my phone. You pick up the phone in the newsroom and you call, and I said, "I can't believe I'm saying this, but you have to stop the presses." And their response was, "What? Are you serious?" And I was like, "Yes, stop the presses. The wrong price is on." And the foreman in the press room immediately said, "Oh gosh, yes, we're stopping."
Great story. Oh my goodness, that's so funny. And okay, so let's talk for a minute, because you've been in journalism for such a long time, and you've been in during these past couple decades when we've had ridiculous technological advances. You've probably seen one of the greatest evolutions of the newspaper since like the invention of the printing press.
Well,
I mean, really.
It feels that way sometimes, that's for sure.
And so how is the newspaper adapting? How is it remaining the same? Like, what's going on with that?
Well, newspapers are in a tough position. I mean, most people are aware of the newspaper industry has been very hard hit. A lot of newspapers are closing, laying off people. Some cities don't even have a daily newspaper anymore, which breaks my heart. And of course, the competition is the internet, where a lot of information is free. Of course, the problem with the internet is a lot of information is wrong.
Right.
I mean, people say what they think or what they hope or what they believe, and it gets sort of passed around as this is actual fact when it might not be. So newspapers are trying really hard to balance of how to make us affordable so that people will, can afford to buy the newspaper or subscribe to a digital version of the newspaper. And while at the same time constantly maintaining our standards of being fair and of reporting actual facts and the truth. So it's a strange balancing act. At the Sentinel, we have a motto or a slogan inside the newsroom where we talk about digital first. When we get a story, we file to the internet. We publish on the internet first. It's for digital readers first, and then it gets into the paper later.
Okay.
So when I review shows now, it used to be back in the day, you saw a show at 8 o'clock at night, it ends at 10:30. You might get up the next morning and write it. It's because it's too late to get in the next day's paper, and then it would run in the following day's paper. Now, as soon as the show is over, I go home and I write the review, and the goal is the deadline is to have it published online by midnight, so that people who are still up or just going to bed can see immediately what is new, what's going on. And then it gets in the paper again 2 days later when the cycle catches up. So that's a big change, too. It's a big change in how you write reviews and how you process. You don't have the luxury of sleeping on it and then thinking the next morning about the best way. You have to be ready and just go with your first instincts, your gut impressions, and be eloquent at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Do you feel that your own writing style has adjusted because of that?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, you really, you like I said, there just isn't the time to really think back and reflect as much as you used to. I mean, that's what the car ride home for is now.
Wow.
That's your thinking time.
Wow. Okay, and we're talking a little bit about, of course, that you're the arts writer. You cover all the different performing arts. How do you feel that the arts section in the Sentinel helps to support the performing arts in Central Florida?
Well, it certainly supports the performing arts by telling people what's going on. I mentioned that earlier. I mean, that's part of the joy of my job is learning about things like when a new ballet is being done by the Orlando Ballet, you know, well, what makes this ballet well known, or why did they choose it, or what will it bring to an audience? And I have sort of the honor to explain that to people and to let them know why this might interest them, why, you know, this is worth seeing, what, you know, what they should go for. And I think that's how it supports the arts. It offers alternatives and variety to people who might not otherwise know about these events.
Absolutely. And do you think that when a story is covered, or excuse me, a show is reviewed in the Sentinel, that they're going to have a better reception, like a bigger audience from it?
I'm told yes, even if the review is not entirely positive, which they often aren't. I mean, it's called being a critic because you're supposed to be critical and try to, you know, encourage the company to maybe raise their game, or, you know, look for the small mistakes or what have you. But even when the review is not entirely positive, people still are interested, because a lot of times I think people want to see what I didn't like. You know, if you say, I thought that this, you know, staging didn't work well, there are people who are curious and want to prove me wrong, or just want to see for themselves and don't, you know, and that's all part of the discussion about the arts. The arts thrive when people talk about it and have a difference of opinion on what works and what doesn't. And I hear from people who
I'm sure you
have a different opinion than I do.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. And tell me this, because of course we're very dance oriented over here at On the Ballroom Beat. When you're watching a heavily dance oriented show, what sorts of things are you looking for?
Well, it depends, because I'm always judging the performance more than the technique, if that makes sense. There's a difference between being a judge and being a critic. And when you go see like a dance competition, like a ballroom competition or any kind of competition, there's big ballet competitions, and they have judges. The judges are looking at technique and following the rules and, you know, attaining a certain standard that the dance world has deemed correct for what these things should be. I'm writing for an audience who may not know any of those things. They want to know how entertaining it is, how it reads on stage. So I am critiquing, not really judging. So what I'm looking for is, how does the dance lift the performance or affect the performance or work with the overall strategy? You know, and it can be anything. If it's a musical, but it's a drama, and there's a dance, well, obviously that has to help that convey that tone a lot more than if it's some 1940s light musical comedy where the dance has to be completely different. And I'm really honestly not so worried for my job if the steps are all perfect, or if, you know, for ballet, if the toes are pointed exactly right at each moment, but is it conveying the story, the message, the emotion that the audience is there to experience?
Very interesting. It's wonderful to hear your perspective and the difference between being a critic and a judge, because it is so different, and yet, you know, has some similarities as well.
I mean, obviously, you do want there to be some good technique. I mean, people are just falling down, but generally, they work hand in hand. I mean, if the technique is that bad, then probably the story is not being served well. So,
without question, very true. And let me ask you, this is just a for fun question. If you could review any show at any point in time, living or dead,
oh my gosh,
what show would you review, and what would you have to say about it?
Well, if I haven't seen it, how will I know what I would say?
No, but you know what I mean. Like, would you go back to the Globe? Would you?
Wow, so we're talking way back.
You can pick anything.
The Globe, which is the famous Shakespeare theater in London, which would probably drive me crazy, because back in those days, everyone talked and chatted. They were standing. There was rain. It was outside. They really would throw things if they didn't like what they were seeing. So that might be hard for like a modern brain to wrap around. I think one of the things that might fascinate me would be seeing live one of the big musicals on Broadway that starred Ethel Merman, who's a famous musical star and was very well known for not needing microphone. I mean, she just had this voice that could fill the house, that could project. And nowadays, when every touring show you see is mic'd to the teeth, literally, I guess, they're singing right in their face, but the music is amplified, the performers are all amplified. It just has that tone, even though it's live, it has a sort of recorded digitally feel.
Right.
To see somebody like that who could really just belt it out live and without just let her voice do the work. I mean, I think that would be pretty amazing.
That would be cool. I would go to that with you. Absolutely, absolutely. Now, when you do go to the theater for fun, are you able to turn the critic mind off?
Yes and no. I pretend that I'm going to, and then I, you know, watch, and all of a sudden I'll notice that I'm watching for things that I would be watching for if I was critiquing. But for the most part, I can, and I can walk out of a show that I've seen for fun, and still, even if I've found 50 things wrong with it, I can still feel like I've enjoyed it because I'm not really there to critique it. It was just, it's just a night out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't exactly turn it off because your brain is trained to look for these things and you always think about these things. And of course, one of the reasons I have the job is I thought about these things before I did this job. That was what gave me some of the skills to do it, is because I did notice and knew what to look for and that sort of thing. So I try to turn it off. I really try.
Okay, so we're talking about seeing a show for fun, but now let's talk about another aspect of it. Have you ever stepped out of the audience and into the spotlight? Taken the stage yourself?
Are you setting me up?
A little bit.
Yes, why, yes, I have. Very recently, as you know, I danced with Dancing with the Local Heroes, which was a fundraiser for the Orlando Sentinel's Family Fund, which is a charity that supports other charities. It collects money and then distributes it to different charities in Central Florida who mostly support youth endeavors, that sort of thing, health and wellness type initiatives. And I had to dance. You can see I'm getting nervous. I'm getting tongue-tied just thinking about it.
So you danced a foxtrot and Dancing with the Local Heroes. Don't go anywhere, because when we return, we're going to take a look at that foxtrot and we're going to talk about what it's like for the critic to step out of the audience and into the spotlight. See you on the other side. To On the Ballroom Beat. I'm Lania Berger here with the Orlando Sentinel newspaper's arts writer and critic, Matt Palm. And before the break, we had just talked about the fact that you were a dancing star in Dancing with the Local Heroes.
I was kind of incognito, as you're going to see in this video, because part of the point of the routine was to have me play a clown. So there was a lot of makeup involved, something else I wasn't used to.
I got to tell you, I'm excited for you all to see this. I think you did a fantastic job in only 8 lessons, isn't that right?
Yes.
Outstanding, outstanding. Let's take a look at Matt Palm dancing the foxtrot at Dancing with the Local Heroes last month.
Doing a foxtrot, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome out to the floor now, Matt Palm and his partner, Ixie.
You must be on. You walked in like the Aga Khan. Did you fly in on a jet? Win $1 million bet. So let me get my good shoes on. I wanna follow in the same old steps, where you waltz around like you're the best, where your garden blooms in May, but it's snowing every day. 'Cause you have everything you want. You must be the Houdini in my life, but you can't see. I could never be your wife, 'cause I'm still a lady. No, I'm not some wench that falls down your lines. I'm not on the fence. Your style must be cramped without a passport stamp. Can't you see the twister that you're in? Right down inside a sea of words. You're going under now, you won't get hurt.
Absolutely superb.
It was outstanding. Again, congratulations on a great event, Damien, to a sold-out audience. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Lonnie. It was nice being here.
Some of these people took 8, 9 lessons, came out here dancing in front of their friends, their families, their colleagues, did a fantastic job, and did it for a darn good cause. So thank you very much.
I could never be your wife, 'cause I'm still a lady. No, I'm not some wench that will spoil your life. I'm not on the fence. Your routine is fading, boy. I could use a wrench. I know my words won't fail me. Please excuse my French. Pardonnez-moi.
Bravo, Matt Palm. That was fantastic. I love your foxtrot. I love your routine. It was so much fun. It had to be kind of weird for you because you've been on the other side so many times. I mean, we talk about you as the critic, but I'm also going to bring up the fact that you've sat in as our Len Goodman judge on Dancing with the Palm Harbor Stars before. So you've been on the other side even with the panels. What was it like to flip over to that part?
There is a new appreciation for when I sit in on those panels, what the performers are doing. Let me tell you, it is a lot harder than I would have guessed. Just trying to remember everything all at once. I mean, the steps, the facial expressions, the arm positions. There's a lot going on up there while you're trying to stay with the beat.
Yeah.
At a minimum. So it was fun to be on the other side, and to really experience what it's like for the students who I have sat in with before to judge. And I'll tell you, the students blew me away.
Oh.
I mean, they were amazing. I mean, they work so hard, and they are so good that, I was like, oh, my little clown routine can hold up to theirs.
What Matt's referring to is that at the beginning of the show, Arthur Murray students of different levels, associate bronze, full silver, full gold, did performances, and that's what you're referring to, those
Right.
students who have been with Arthur Murray's for years and years.
Watching them was very intimidating.
Yeah, they're pretty good. They're really good, yeah, absolutely. But your group were the group of heroes who each had about 8 lessons.
Right.
Which is, closer to the feeling of the actual show, where it's somebody who hasn't danced before, who's thrown into this, has to learn, the technique, the steps, the
Right.
rhythm, the timing, the frame, all this different stuff. Do you think that I'll say when you step back into judging, will this affect the way that you judge?
It will somewhat, just because as I said, the idea of having to actually mentally deal with all the different things in your head, it's so much more than just looking at the steps. I mean, there's just a lot more going on, and now I think I'm more personally aware of all of them.
What was the biggest surprise for you during your training process and in your time learning how to dance?
The biggest surprise really is, first of all, how fast a lesson could go. Mm-hmm. I would feel like we just started, and you look up at the clock, and it's like, oh my gosh, we're done. But that's it. I mean, because your mental concentration is so intense on what you're doing. So that was a surprise, and I wasn't surprised about how much fun it was, because obviously people do it as a hobby or for their
Right.
leisure time. If it wasn't fun, why would they be doing it? So I knew it would be fun, but it's a different kind of fun. I was surprised how it's such focused working fun. The fun is almost when you finally get something. You finally get the step, or you finally hit it just right, or that's where the fun comes in. And you really do feel something like a great sense of accomplishment along with the fun.
And this kind of goes right in with my next question. What was most rewarding for you about the whole experience?
I think the most rewarding aspect was watching the whole show come together. More than just me personally, just because I'm interested in how shows work and how they run and how they come together. And, the backstage is much crazier than you would think if you're in the audience watching, all this, the backstage stuff, getting us all ready. The makeup process was fascinating. Picking the costumes. I mean, there's a lot more to a show than just the dancing.
Right, it's true.
The chatter with the MC, just everything.
That's very true.
Watching it all work together was really fascinating.
What advice would you give to a first-time competitor?
Oh, try not to be nervous. It's impossible advice. Everybody's going to be nervous. I mean, I was very nervous, but really try not to, because the interesting thing about it is everyone is on your side. And your partner obviously is on your side. But honestly, I believe in my heart the judges are all on your side too. They want you to do well. And I say this from my experience as a critic. People always say, oh, it must be, so much fun. You get to be so nasty when people, screw up or something goes wrong in a show. And honestly, you never want to be nasty. You have to be accurate. But if you're being nasty, you aren't really being that professional. You're just being kind of a jerk. But the other thing is, you don't want the shows to go wrong. When you see people who have worked that hard and put all that time in and all that practice, you want everything to go well for them. And there is a joy in watching a show come together, or in a dance competition case, a routine come together.
Right.
I mean, that is rewarding to the critics and the judges as well. We want you to succeed.
Yeah, that's a really great thing it's lovely to hear that perspective, because I think you're right. Sometimes people sort of psych themselves out and get themselves so worked up and nervous that it's good to remember.
Right. No, everyone's. I mean, the audience is on your side. The audience doesn't want to. They want to watch a great routine. I mean, everybody is on your side. So just try to go with that wave of good feeling. That's part of the show.
Now, I'm going to give you a quick update on Dancing with the Stars season 22. Did you know there are 2 journalists on the show this year?
No.
Yes. So Geraldo Rivera is going to be dancing.
I think I did hear Geraldo Rivera was doing it. I laughed and laughed.
And then Ginger Z, the chief meteorologist for Good Morning America, is going to be dancing as well. So just one last question for you. Journalists have a critical eye, a curious mind. How do you think that might help them as they prepare for their season of Dancing with the Stars?
Well, I have to be a little snobbish and say these, of course, are TV journalists and not newspaper journalists. They are actually more used to putting on a show. They will be good. They know how to play to a camera. They know how to focus on a camera. They know how to do things on the fly, as opposed to sort of behind-the-scenes newspaper people with their notebooks. But I will say what might trip them up a little is Geraldo Rivera is kind of used to calling his own shots. And so is a meteorologist who stands there with a green screen. And, she will have to be led by a man. He will have to, not just freestyle and do his own thing. He's got to follow the structure of a song. He's got to stick to the timing. He's got to, and they might find that a little challenging. That it's not all going to be up to them. They're part of a partnership, and they've got to work with their partners.
Very true, very true. Well, we'll be rooting for them. And Len Goodman is returning as well, which I'm very excited about. Matt, we've run out of time. This has been such a delight. You talked about a lesson going fast. This show went so fast. It was so much fun. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
It was my pleasure. And you talk about being on the other side. Now I know how it feels to be asked the questions instead of asking the questions. So that was fun for me.
You've had a fun role reversal all around, haven't you? Well, thank you for doing Dancing with the Palm Harbor, Dancing with the Local Heroes, supporting the Orlando Sentinel Family Fund, and for joining us on the Ballroom Beat.
My pleasure.
And make sure that you all tune in. There's more dancing fun coming March 21st on ABC. Dancing with the Stars Season 22 premieres. Make sure that you tune in. And tune in next week to On the Ballroom Beat as we prepare for the Arthur Murray Palm Harbor Medals Ball. See you then.
Cha-cha on the ballroom beat. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Cha-cha on the ballroom beat. Got 2 left feet. Get on the ballroom beat. They're dancing in the street. They're on the ballroom beat. We can tango, we can swing, we can do anything. Walking through the door and waltz on the floor. You wanna feel the heat? Get on the ballroom beat. Cha-cha on the ballroom beat. Foxtrot on the ballroom beat. Salsa on the ballroom beat. Cha-cha on the ballroom